And we are back for the final round of Swiss in today's Eternal Tournament series. I am Sir Rhino, and joining me in the booth as we get ready for the top 8 is IlyaK.
Hello, and welcome to the final round of Swiss in today's ETS. And we have another interesting match for you, a deck that both decks we've already seen a couple of times, but another take on both archetypes. We have drolicheck on what I describe as Armory Blue against Bikespkoes, who's essentially playing Xenon Killers with a full package with lots of copies of Dark Return, Xenon Initiation, and Auric Interrogator, or as Rhino first dubbed it, Killer Interrogation.
Yeah. So
overall, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a great example of how we live in a metagame with no truly stock lists, right? There's all sorts of permutations and modifications you can take to a lot of different archetypes. And I think that's really shown here with this Ikaria list. We've seen Ikaria lists with primal cards multiple times on camera today. Both of them were different. And this is even another different take. As you said, this is more of Armory, Primal Armory, with the real standout here is 4 Rakano Artisans. That's a real, to me, signals that it's an Armory deck, right? 4 Sword of Ikaria, 4 Auric Runehammer, 2 Daisho. So more relic weapons than we're seeing in these other Ikaria lists, only 2 Ikaria. And really just emphasizing I'm an Armory deck with primal card draw, and now I have access to Lightning Strike, Lightning Storm, Staff of Stories in the sideboard, these sorts of tools instead of what you get from Shadow.
Right. So I think Bikespkoes' deck with his Dawnwalkers and Xenon Obelisks really lines up well against what drolicheck is trying to do. Drolicheck wants to say, I'm going to remove your key units. Meanwhile, Bikespkoes is saying, oh, all my units are going to be key units after these obelisks come down. And after they do, I'm going to be presenting you with recurring key units as well. And every time you spend a piece of removal, you're not getting that back, and I'm getting these Dawnwalkers back over and over and over again. So I give the edge to Bikespkoes in this case, but I do think that a drolicheck playing the control to a mid-range deck definitely has ways to bring this matchup.
Yeah, if Bikespkoes gets the draw where he finds multiple Dawnwalkers or an Obelisk, as you said, these are the key cards in the matchup. But we also talked about last round, you're not always going to find your key cards, and it's how good is this deck when that doesn't happen that will come up here. But crucially, this Armory list has no Valkyrie Enforcers in the main deck, no silence of any kind. So when a Dawnwalker shows up, once you crucially hit that 4th time source, it'll keep coming back, right? That is we haven't seen a ton of Dawnwalkers since it's got nerfed, and it's tough to play in especially Xenon when it has not quite as strong fixing as some of the other time decks, but it can still be a very powerful card against control decks.
Oh, definitely. When you're playing Harsh Rule and you see a Dawnwalkers in the deck of the player across from you, you know you're in for a rough ride, and you're hoping to win game 1 somehow, and then hope your sideboard addresses them.
So Bikespkoes draws the opening fire by using a Vera's Favor there. Had the option to play out an Argenport Instigator, but wanted to just make sure they had some undepleted power going forward, curve out properly. Also got to Saw the Pause for Torch, but that doesn't really matter much here. All of your units are going to die to Torch until you find an Obelisk. In the meantime, drolicheck just developing power, playing Seek Power, playing out depleted power, and then strategizing and sculpting a hand. Now has access to Torch, Sword of Ikaria, Vanquish, and Rise.
Right, so drolicheck needs to get going here as Dawnwalkers come out. Things are not going to be looking pretty. In the meantime, Bikespkoes is going to deploy this Argenport Instigator, and that's just going to eat a Torch. Turn, keeping the board clear. Harsh Rule the pickup for a drolicheck. He has a choice between the Sword of Ikaria and this Rise to the Challenge. Opts to go for the rise to the challenge.
Sure.
setting up big plays down the line. If it were me, I would have gone for the Sword of Icaria play. He picks
Wow.
up a 6/4 Star Steel die show. So he is not screwing
All
around.
right.
He's saying, I'm not gonna get an Icaria that swings for 7. I'm going to get the Star Steel die show, and I'm going to try and end this game in a hurry. Another
Right.
Sword of Icaria, the pickup for the turn. So drolicheck is going to be at 5 power with an active Sword of Icaria.
Yeah, but Bikespokes here picked up a Dark Return. That's a useful tool to have because now you can play out the Auric Interrogator and not. He was kind of waiting for something along the lines of a Harsh Rule, or not a Harsh Rule. That's what Drolicheck just drew, a Xenon Obelisk. But yeah, Drolicheck with that Rise for Dice Show, I like it because look at the hand, right? You already had a Vanquish and a Harsh Rule, so you know you're going to be able to keep a board relatively clear for this Dice Show and use that to apply a whole lot of pressure. I mean, a dice show backed up by 2 Harsh Rules is a sickening sight. But here we see Dark Return on Interrogator get the card draw going for Bikespokes because he's going to need it. Annihilate is a straight up blank draw.
So Drolicheck picking up an uncastable Wisdom of the Elders as he's sitting on 1 primal. And he's faced with the decision of, do I Harsh Rule 1 unit and hit for 3? Because he's off of his 2nd primal influence and off of his 6th power for the Star Steel die show. So Bikespokes sees, oh, you Harsh Ruled 1 unit. That means you don't have an answer. You better have an answer for this next unit. A 5/4 Rhino Artisan.
But a
courtesy
good
of
killer
Sword of
target.
Icaria War Cries is the draw for this turn. Is going to most likely not the draw that you want if you're Drolicheck. And I think the Xenon Initiation is just going to come out and clean up this Artisan and an Instigator. So this Sword of Icaria is just done.
Opting to go Initiation on Instigator there rather than Initiation on Rhino. Rhino would have survived and taken out the sword, but I'm a little surprised that Bikespokes just decided to essentially throw away a unit there.
Yeah, that might be an issue coming down the line. But Dawnwalker, the draw for this turn, as Bikespokes is just going to be able to deploy his entire hand now.
That'll get a Harsh Rule out.
Picking up that crucial 6th power is an Emerald Waystone. So this die show is going to be a 6/5 for whatever will matter. And Bikespokes is now, oh my gosh, at the mercy of his top decks, as Drolicheck is now going to smash him for 12 with his Star Steel die show with a 3rd Harsh Rule in hand. And that's going to
Okay, but there's an Ion.
Never mind. Ion being the pickup for the turn. Drolicheck in a commanding position.
Nope.
You have a good draw. Nope. How's this one? The Queen of the Skies is the draw for the turn, and this Ion's going to have to come out and eat this.
So
that's going to put Bikespokes to 11, but it's not going to be enough.
And I think just willingly giving up an Instigator there, I think it was kind of the story of that game where you willingly went down 1 less unit without having your opponent have to remove it. And that just made it that much easier for the dice show to get through and do work. But as you said, 3 Harsh Rule draws with that dice show, just a tough draw for Bikespokes to deal with. Drolicheck really thinking ahead with that Rise to the Challenge on the dice show, knowing how that draw was going to work out with all those Vanquishes and Harsh Rules already in hand, could see how to close out this game, get the pressure going before, like you said, those Dawnwalkers showed up. And that's what happened there.
Right, so Drolicheck knowing what was up, knowing that he actually was sort of the beatdown in that match because he was not going to be able to outgrind Dawnwalkers without having any silences. So he went for the throat and barely got there, with Bikespokes essentially assisting him because that Rhino, if it got the initiation, it was going to deal 2 damage and pop that Sword of Icaria. And the trigger from the Instigator would have, essentially put him in much better.
Yeah, so now we go to sideboards. Bikespokes down a game can adjust has some advantage in terms of being able to take out some blank removal, like we saw the one of Annihilate not have much targets, but not a whole lot to improve this matchup, honestly, unless you want to bring in like Vara's Choice because it's very nice against Rise to the Challenge, Ikaria style decks. But this deck's not playing quite as many units, right? There's a high chance of it whiffing. On the other end, drolicheck gets to really sculpt the right removal package, bring in these Valkyrie Enforcers for some crucial silences and things like that. So what are you looking? I guess more of the question is, you know what you want to bring in if you're drolicheck. What do you want to take out? What isn't working in this matchup?
Okay, so honestly, I'm not too hot on Sword of Ikaria in this matchup. End of turn Torch on your Ion or your Auric Interrogator is great, but it's not out there just waiting to be killed. If you drop a Sword of Ikaria to say kill a Temple Scribe, and then your opponent goes, oh, hello, this is a Sandstorm Titan, you are going to be an unhappy camper. Similarly, Throne Warden does not really line up well against most of the units that most of the key units they're going to be attacking. It doesn't line up well against the Behemoths, the Titans, the Dawnwalkers, and you're trying to control the board anyway. If your Zenith opponent is regularly cracking in, 4 armor isn't really going to help you. So I'm looking to for a drolicheck to cut the swords, cut the maybe some Throne Wardens, and bring in these Enforcers, the Visions of Austerity, I think, and possibly another Ikaria or Island's Choice.
While Vision of Austerity does hit Obelisk, it hits nothing else, and that's a risky card to bring in, but I see what you're going for at the very least. The Sword of Ikaria, I'm also they definitely do whiff a lot and don't kill quite what you want or aren't quite as efficient as you want. But every time you trim one of those, you're also making your Rakano Artisans. And that's a tricky balance to navigate as you are committed to these artisans as well. So we'll see as we get into this post-board game what players settled on, as drolicheck's got a nice hand of power and double harsh rule again. But Bikespkoes brought in a devastating setback and can throw that at hand to basically have it work in this matchup as a bad sabotage, but that's still good enough. I imagine all 3 sabotages then also came in for Bikespkoes.
Oh, yes. So Bikespkoes saying, I'm against the control deck. How do I attack them? Out comes a Friendly Wisp. However, Xenon doesn't really have a 3-drop that will activate the Wisp. So I think drolicheck is going to know that, and out comes the Rhino Artisan. Throne Warden is the pickup for this turn, so I didn't predict that sideboard incorrectly. drolicheck opts to keep at least 1 in the deck.
Yeah, that armor can go a long way on the weapons you're playing, and I think that's what drolicheck is banking on with this Throne Warden. And here we see the sabotage is the draw for turn, but opts to use setback because it uses your power better. You're not going to be wiping the board with it, and takes the torch rather than one of these harsh rules.
So Bikespkoes is on the plan that I already committed the Wisp, and I want to make sure I can survive. It can survive to draw my cards, as he has a Sandstorm Titan and Impending Doom in the wings, but doesn't actually have the power to cast any of them. So he knows he's safe from harsh rule for several turns.
Yeah, we see
and has time to sabotage that.
We see a strategize actually throw Warden to the bottom, and I think I would have just planned on taking both harsh rules. Like, if your Friendly Wisp ends up being a sabotage for a torch, I'm okay with that, seeing that my hand is Obelisk, Titan, Doom. I realize it can end up being a draw too, but now you have to play knowing your opponent has a harsh rule, and plus you don't know if you're going to draw an undepleted power to get this Wisp off the board anyways. We'll see if that decision ends up working out for Bikespkoes, but I'm skeptical as we see drolicheck have that sort of Ikaria waiting in the wings.
Unfortunately, that sort of Ikaria is not going to have a target, as this Impending Doom is going, or Titan is going to come down and make this Friendly Wisp, pretty worthless as far as targeting goes.
Yeah, so that play pays off in spades for Bikespokes as he draws a sabotage off the friendly Wisp and gets to take out the harsh roll anyway. Shows what I know. Bikespokes knew how this was going to go. That friendly Wisp survived a long time because of taking out that torch, and it paid off, man, better than you could ever imagine here.
And of course the taunt as torch is the draw for the turn right after the friendly Wisp went off to draw a sabotage, and now drolicheck is going to have to 2-for-1 himself on this impending doom.
And now the threats will keep coming out of Bikespokes here. Another impending doom, a Sandstorm Titan waiting in the wings, drolicheck in top deck mode, and coming up with just power, just a sigil to play for turn and facing down a whole lot of pressure. Bikespokes content to keep 2 units in play, just augment them with Xenon Obelisk, but an Ikaria off the top, but no fire influence.
Not there.
Oh man, uncastable Ikaria. And this is not looking good for drolicheck, down to 12 health thanks to that armor, but facing down a whole lot of damage. And an ion for the draw means that this is almost over for drolicheck here. Interrogator will draw a card. Bikespokes is down to 12 because of these pings, and drolicheck finds a fire source. Oh man, and a Runehammer that's going to get buffed here.
So ultimately, do you live for this one turn?
You're at 4? I don't think so. 4 units against 2.
No, that Ion's going to come through even if you chump this.
So, drolicheck almost got out of it there right at the end. That Ikaria into Runehammer gave him at least a shot, but some very timely sabotages out of the sideboard, helping the Xenon deck from Bikespokes navigate through all of those harsh rules and get a nice amount of pressure, establish a good board, back it up with the Xenon Obelisk, and close out that game before Ikaria could do her damage.
Right. Bikespokes had a pretty good draw, however. He had 5 discard effects, which were in the top 15, 3 of which were in the top 15-ish cards of his deck. That's a pretty star-studded draw, and we'll have to see if that draw keeps up.
The beauty is, though, if those aren't in the top of your deck, hopefully your Dawnwalkers are, right? You're just giving yourself more draws that are good draws in this matchup.
Right.
You're just upping your opportunities. Like before, you're talking about pre-board, the only cards that really mattered out of Xenon were Dawnwalker and Obelisk. Post-board, now you're talking Dawnwalker, Obelisk, Setback, and Sabotage. You're just upping those numbers of cards that really can help you out in this matchup.
And so going into game 3, drolicheck is looking at a stinker of a hand, but it looks like it's a post-mull hand, as it's 2 torches, Rokano Banner, Justice Sigil, Ikaria that's going to be uncastable for a long time, and no primal influence for this strategize. So drolicheck needs a lot of help with this hand.
Bikespokes isn't really any better off, though. He's got nice amounts of power and good threats, but doesn't have double shadow yet to start deploying these interrogators. So instead is going to opt to play out the monument there, despite being able to curve out into these Sandstorm Titans without doing that. I'm a little surprised to see the monument.
So out comes the first Titan, and a crucial vanquish off the top is going to immediately address it.
Yeah, I think, willingly giving up threats. We've seen Bikespokes do this in the past. We saw him initiate one of his units and trade with one, and now we saw him just give up a Rhino in this game. But in comes the Titan. That'll eat a double torch. drolicheck desperately looking for primal sources or at least a 5th power to get harsh roll out. Hopefully both, as another threat comes down in the form of Sandstorm Titan. And there we see it. Power, it's a crest, it's primal. And will he keep that undepleted fire sigil on top? Have to see. Yeah,
he does.
He wants that undepleted power. Doesn't mind that he doesn't have double primal yet. He'll be able to cast most other things. And finds 2 power off the top. Will we see what will get bottomed here?
Well, you don't want to bottom Ikaria. Oh, bottoms Eilin's Choice.
Wow. Holding on to the unseal to Counter this setback or sabotage so that he can use Harsh Rule.
So out comes the devastating setback, and out comes the Unseal, saying, I'm having none of that.
Yep. So
Harsh Rule comes down, as well as a 6th power. So that's Ikaria next turn, waiting in the wings. But an Impending Doom says, oh, not so fast.
Yeah, but this is also another kind of ramification play where the one turn Bikespokes opted to play a Sandstorm Titan instead of a Rheinarch, and now he's got this Rheinarch in hand where this Titan would have lined up much better against this Ikaria on this turn. Although Impending Doom does an okay job, it's a straight trade rather than a total grounding and nullification of Ikaria. And
right, so
those little decisions matter in a long, protracted game against control like this. And this is why Ikaria decks have gotten away from being Armory style with Rakano Artisan, because it dilutes the quality of your Warcry hits. And here we see, I mean, the Artisan's big. It's just not as good as a Whirling Duo or a Sheltering Rider or any of your weapons. It's just a big unit.
But a 7/6, that'll get the job done. As a Wisdom of the Elders comes off the top, while Bikespokes top decks that sabotage. And here we go. Wisdom into Wisdom.
drolicheck just looking for something.
Into
all right,
Wisdom?
he'll keep looking. Wisdom off of Wisdom off of Wisdom. So much knowledge accrued for drolicheck here. He'll just cast that again on Bikespokes' turn in response to this sabotage. Hoping to not draw anything too good or two really good things. And yeah, there we go. The sabotage.
And the Wisdom in response is going to actually not draw any spells. But this means this Dark Return is...
Yep, Dark Return grabs Interrogator. And it starts drawing cards. That's his favorite part. But drolicheck finds a Vanquish off the top after drawing through so much of his deck with Wisdom of the Elders. You got to think that's going to hit this Auric Interrogator right away.
Oh, definitely. On the control deck, you're not outdrawing me. Go away. Vanquish comes down, that Auric Interrogator, cleans that up. The 7/6 is going to swing in, putting Bikespokes to 9.
Yeah, so drolicheck continuing to be the beatdown here, decides to swing with the Artisan rather than hang back with it. And drolicheck cracks in, finds another Impending Doom off of this Temple Scribe. And drolicheck, man, both players precariously low on health with a lot of big units on both sides. And drolicheck finally taking his foot off the gas, holding back this Rakano Artisan, shifting to Valkyrie Enforcer as his beatdown plan.
So Bikespokes on a 3-turn clock has to come up with something. I'm pretty sure he will. But drolicheck at the same time, 3 Wisdoms later, and essentially all he has to show for it is a Valkyrie Enforcer. So he is not in the greatest of shape either, knowing full well that things can get pretty bad in a heartbeat again.
Yeah, we are post sideboard, so I don't even know what kind of outs Bikespokes has as far as dealing directly with this Rakano Artisan. Who knows how many banishes are still in, probably a good amount against Armory. But as far as other removal goes, I think really what Bikespokes wants is something along the lines of Obelisk to apply pressure, but instead just finds a Friendly Wisp, which you can deploy as a chump blocker for a turn, or hold and hope to get value out of. But the clock is ticking at 6 health.
Right, that's not a long time. Oh, a Sword of Ikaria off the top is going to clean up that Friendly Wisp. I think.
Yeah, that is the likely hit here. Like, you could have taken out one of the 5/5s, but then you're taking a lot of damage, and you're probably still not going to pressure with Artisan. And yep, World Bear Behemoth off the top for Bikespokes means this Valkyrie Enforcer is going to close out the game, and he scoops it up.
So congratulations to drolicheck. Again, we see the Zen player for the second straight round missing his key cards until far too late. Not a single Dawnwalker showed up that game, nor a single copy of Obelisk.
There
Me,
were
me,
also, though, some questionable sequencing plays early on in the game that ended up really punishing them, right? We saw them play that very early monument and then ended up flooding the rest of the game where that extra 5-5 could have gone a long way in that matchup. Uh,
oh, absolutely. We because of that lack of 5-5, there was no way to stall the board, and I believe Bikespokes wound up taking 2 hits from a 7-6 Artisan. Not exactly the most glamorous way to go after you dealt with an Icaria, just to get beat down by some random Icaria buffed dork. Uh, so I think Bikespokes could have played that a little bit tighter in that third game. Even in that yeah. So ultimately, I think it was a very close match, and I think it could have gone either way had a few different lines been taken.
Yeah, anytime you get into these grindy matchups, those early game decisions have long-term ramifications, and they're not easy to make or easy to see. You don't know what the top of your deck's going to bring, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. But hats off to drolicheck, who moves to 5-2, and depending on how the breakers fall, has a shot at top 8. But we're not sure exactly what that bracket's looking like just yet. So we're going to take a quick break here, get ready for top 8 coverage, and then bring you all of that action, what decks made it, who's in, who's out. And I'm excited. We've had a pretty awesome field so far today. A lot of different decks than what we've seen in the past, and we'll see if that continues when we return.
Right. So ultimately, we've seen lots of Icaria, Gunslingers, Xenon, stuff we haven't seen before the patch in some capacity, and so we'll have to see what shows up in the top 8.
Oh yes, it's an exciting time. I know we're guaranteed some gunslingers that they've been performing well and been pretty popular today, but we'll see what else is in store when we return after this break.
See you soon.